Good evening, y'all. Welcome back to Bourbon and Bones. Tonight is our 6th episode. And if you're returning to us again, thank you for joining us. And if you're new to us, thanks for coming. Thanks for checking us out. And if you like what we're doing, like and subscribe below. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. And so without further ado, let's dig in. So tonight we're going to talk about probably one of the most successful bourbons, hand-dipped, and that would be Maker's Mark. A wheated bourbon that survived the dark days of the bourbon industry in the 1970s and 80s. And he even had a helping hand from Pappy Van Winkle Jr. So Maker's Mark began in 1953 with Bill Samuels Sr. Mr. Samuels had a family distilling recipe that dated back 170 years. And he hated it. It was too sharp for him. It was too hot. It was too much rye. And he was quoted to even say, "Give me a bourbon that won't blow my ears off." Instead of distilling whiskey to practice with, he actually, and aging it and seeing if that's what he wanted, which could take years to produce the right kind of bourbon quality that he was looking for, he actually decided to bake bread with the grains that he wanted to use. And so it kind of gave the general flavor profile that he was trying to find. This cut out honestly, decades of experimentation. Even with small barrels, could take years to come up with the right recipe. What he finally decided to use was red winter wheat, an American grain, and it's one of the earlier wheated bourbons that went largely commercial. And he also got a hand, as I mentioned before, from a distiller that many of us know is from Pappy Van Winkle. So it's also a wheated bourbon, and like I've talked about before, the bourbon industry in Kentucky for so long wasn't always competitive. There was plenty of competitiveness, and there's plenty of wanting to gain larger market shares. But it was also like they wanted to talk about what was succeeding and how others can succeed off of that. So he actually Pappy Jr. gave Mr. Samuels a sample of the yeast that he used. And so now that is such a highly guarded secret in every distillery. But he actually got a helping hand at the beginning of his bourbon. And another quote, like I mentioned earlier, is "Behind every man is a great woman." And Bill's wife, Margie Samuels, co-founder, advertising genius, she did as much to make Maker's Mark a powerhouse and a household name than Bill did. So Mr. Samuels is producing the great bourbon that you're tasting, but Margie actually designed everything that made Maker's Mark Maker's Mark. So Margie designed the bottle, the label, and the idea of using hand-dipped wax to set their bottle apart on the shelf. In fact, in 2014, Margie Samuels was inducted into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame as the first woman that was involved directly in a distillery. Not only did she design the bottle and sacrifice her deep fryer for testing the dripping wax on the bottle, she's also the mother of bourbon tourism. If you ever get a chance to visit Kentucky and go on the Bourbon Trail, don't miss Maker's Mark. It's a little bit further out of the way. It's settled in the heart of Loretto, Kentucky. And as you drive out there, you're going through these beautiful horse farms, rolling hills, black fences, beautiful barns. And then all of a sudden you kind of enter in this large patch of wood. And as you emerge, the trees start to turn black. And all of a sudden there's a giant distillery. Black storage houses, red accents everywhere. Everything is designed to be part of tourism. And it honestly feels like you've stepped back in time. You're so far removed from modern day. It's an absolutely beautiful distillery. And as a quick side note, the reason why the trees turn black is actually because the sugars that are released during the fermentation process of bourbon, it actually sticks to the trees and mold grows on the trees and actually turns them black. So during the old bootlegger days in the 1930s, that's actually how the government men would catch distillers, because they'd look for black trees, and then they knew they could whittle it down to a certain area and actually find the still. Anyway, much of the design of the distillery is due to Margie. The color scheme, the landscaping itself, and she even made her husband promise that $1 out of every bottle sold would go into the upkeep and the beautification of the distillery itself. So after Bill and Margie retired, Bill Samuels Jr. took over the company. By trade, he was actually a rocket scientist and worked on the Polaris Missile project. He also took makers through the Dark Ages. The bourbon industry of the 1970s and 80s fell primarily to vodka. It was a cocktail time. Even American whiskeys like Seagram 7, things like that, were the most popular. But Bill Jr. actually sold the family company to Hiram Walker, and he used that money to advertise Maker's Mark as a premium, sophisticated whiskey for the who's who in American culture. So he advertised in GQ, in any sophisticated magazine, Cosmopolitan, and the distinctive look of the bottle allowed so much advertisement space, and it worked. It worked so well that Maker's was virtually the only bourbon distillery to see growth during the dark ages of bourbon. So Bill Jr. also started something really unique to the liquor industry at all. And that was actually the Maker's Mark Ambassador Program. So it's totally free to join, and you just go to makersmark.com and just sign up if you're over 21. And when you get it, you actually get a welcome letter from the current COO, Robert Samuels, so that's Bill Jr.'s son, welcoming you to the ambassadorship program. And next you actually get the ambassador manifesto. It has your name, your ambassador ID number, when you actually became an ambassador of Maker's Mark. And it talks about what that means. And so really what it means is that on your barrel, your name will be on a plaque. And that is your barrel of bourbon. That after 7 approximate years, you will actually get another letter saying, hey, your barrel is ready. Come and get your own sample. You get to hand dip it. It's a unique bottle just for ambassadors. Also within your ambassador kit is inside your whiskey barrel. So it's a tasting for Maker's Mark. You also get your very own Maker's Mark Ambassador business cards. Again, with your name, your ambassador number, when you became an ambassador, and what your current barrel number is. And finally, you get a certificate that actually shows that you are officially a Maker's Mark ambassador, with the sigil as well, pressed into the hand, into the wax. And it's a wonderful program. It's completely free to join. If you like Maker's Mark at all, if you like the experience of going in and just to the distillery and touring, sign up. Also, every Christmas you get little special gifts that they send you in the mail. Little hats that fit on top of your Maker's Mark bottle, or sweaters, pins, all kinds of little things. And it's a fun way to engage with an entire industry, starting with Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark's portfolio is a little slim compared to others. It contains, of course, the original Maker's Mark 46, a cast strength version, and brand new, you can only buy it at the distillery, is Maker's Mark 101, and it's 101 proof bourbon. So it's kind of funny because in 2013, Maker's Mark actually announced that due to demand, they were actually going to lower the proofage of Maker's from 90 proof to 84. And this was met with outrage, general outrage, and Maker's very quickly reversed course. And they decided not to do that because the fans actually said that we'd rather pay a bit more for what we love than to get something a little bit weak just so there's more of it. And then the next year they they released the barrel proof. So, not really sure what they're saying about that. But maybe they just read the crowd well. Not sure. Bill Sr., his only advice to his son and grandson was, don't screw up the whiskey. And I really think that the lovers of Maker's Mark completely agree with that sentiment. So let's look at the bottle now. So the famous red dripping wax, all hand done. And when you visit the distillery, you will actually get to see real people doing that. Not a machine, actual person sitting there dipping every single bottle. It's actually kind of amazing. So the insignia here, here's a close-up of it, actually has everything to do with the history of Maker's Mark. And it was, of course, created and designed by Margie. And the star here actually symbolizes the homestead that they were living on, which is Star Hill Farms. The S is for Samuels, and the number 4 in Roman numerals is for her husband Bill, who is the 4th generation distiller in the family. Come to find out later, they actually discovered that he was actually the 6th generation distiller, but the crest is set, and so I think they prefer not to change it now. So now, we've talked about the history, we've talked about the bottle, we've talked about everything we can about it. So let's go ahead and get into the bourbon itself. So of course we're going to start with it neat. And it's very delicate. All wheated bourbons are very delicate bourbons. And this was a beautiful one. This very light, very approachable bourbon. So right away you just get sweet corn, kind of an apple-y butterness to it. A little bit of a fruit, maybe cherry. And on the palate you get this like burst of spicy black pepper, which has to come from the barrel because there's no rye in the mash bill. So for it to be like the first note that you get, it's kind of amazing that they're getting all of that flavor just from barrel note. Then you get like a creamy corn kind of flavor. And of course like a big burst of vanilla. And a little bit of maybe menthol or mint of some kind. But it's just this kind of slowly evolving flavor profile that leaves the palate just nice and warm. So let's go take a quick 10-minute break. I'm gonna let my palate rest, drink some water, and we're gonna switch over to some water and kind of see what that does for it. Welcome back, y'all. So we tried Maker's Mark neat, and now we're going to try it with a little bit of water. So, and right away it's still that big burst of sweet corn and a little bit of apple, but I think some of the butteriness kind of falls off. And the cherry note is significantly reduced. And with a little bit of water, that big burst of black pepper really reduces. I mean, seriously pulls back. And that creamy kind of corn sweetness actually kind of drifts into a really buttery flavor, almost like a little bit of marzipan is kind of coming with it. And of course, that vanilla and kind of butteriness is blending well. And actually a little bit more mint than menthol. And really just tones it down on spice, but kind of brings out this really smooth consistency that's absolutely fantastic. Actually, and honestly, they're both great. It just, if you like a little bit more of a punchiness, keep it neat. If you like a little bit more smoothie silkiness, add a touch of water to it. They're both really good ways to drink this. This is a really nice one. And still, I like a nice warm finish. Not quite as warm and not quite as long lasting as neat, of course, but still a very nice one. I'm very, very pleased with that. All right, so my verdict on Maker's Mark. It is a very pleasant, very easy to drink, approachable bourbon. It is cost effective. It is very well priced. And it's good. Like, it's solid. Would you write home about it? No. Would you ever be sad it was in your glass? I don't think so. Try it in a cocktail. At its price point, you can try it in cocktails. Try it, make an old fashioned with it, or a Manhattan. Just try it neat, try it cold, try it with a little bit of water. See what you think about it, and let me know in the comments below. I'm always excited to hear what you all think. But for me, it's absolutely solid. It's a nice bourbon. So for our final transition for the evening, we're going to switch over, of course, to the bones portion. We've dug into the bourbon, so let's dig into some fossils. So I'm going to take the protective cover lid off of this fossil here. And so behind the Tyrannosaurus rex, the second most recognizable dinosaur, in my opinion, in most 8-year-olds' opinion, would be the Velociraptor. A quick, feathered, intelligent, and most likely a bit of a pack hunter. And this is one of its teeth. And here's a close-up picture of the specimen. Remember that in the Jurassic Park movies, they were about 2 meters tall, so they were about 6 feet tall. And what they were actually depicting was something called the Utah Raptor, which was actually discovered a year after the films came out. So it was a little projection. There was some hypotheses that raptors did get larger, but until that was discovered, it was just basically movie magic. Because velociraptors are actually only about 1 meter tall. It's about 3 feet tall, about the size of a pretty good sized turkey. So fans of the film will enjoy that one. So the Velociraptor and raptors in general lived in the late Cretaceous, which is so raptors were from the Dromaeosaur Theropod family. And Dromaeosaur means running lizard in Greek. Of course, we know that dinosaurs weren't lizards, but they were the closest thing that early paleontologists understood them as. And so T-Rex was terrible lizard, and Dromaeosaurids were running lizards. So it's just science evolves, and sometimes the names can't because they've already been named. You know. So they were small to medium feathered carnivores, and theropods were hollow-boned, 3-toed, and 3-fingered limbed, stiff-tailed, usually bipedal dinosaurs. So yes, raptors were in fact feathered, and yes, there is great evidence to support that. There's also a lot of really interesting evidence that they were often brightly colored. Now, most of the hypotheses right now, and some theories are presenting, that the likelihood is that the males were brightly colored and females were more muted, just like in modern day birds. However, unlike modern day birds, raptors had powerful cutting claws on the inside foot. And these were huge slashing claws that actually would help them take down larger prey. Most likely they hunted at night or in twilight in the early morning hours or the evening hour when their prey were sleepy and less alert or just waking up. This tooth is from an unknown raptor species. I'm going to call it Velociraptor because that's most likely what people know it as. And it's a pretty solid guess about where it was discovered and its time frame. It's very likely that it was, or a very close relative. Without finding more of the specimen, we can't be sure. And that is sometimes the, I don't want to say guesswork for paleontology, but sometimes it's kind of the guesswork of paleontology. So it's either a velociraptor or possibly a Dakotaraptor, or another small relative to it discovered in North America. So this tooth itself is about 2 centimeters long and about 1 centimeter across at the base. You see the enamel has been fossilized as well. It's a very great specimen. Not quite museum quality, but for me, I think it's pretty fantastic. And along the inside of the tooth here are these little serrations, like a steak knife. And here are some great pictures from a recent paper taken with an electron microscope showing that in great detail. And these are called denticles. And these basically were used to dive into flesh, bite into it, and tear it away. So unlike the T-Rex, they were used for cutting through flesh and bone. These were actually just used to cut into flesh. So these were actually post-kill or scavenging any opportunity to grab a meal. And they were actually there just to tear things away, like you do with a steak and a knife. So the lack of the root here on the bone actually shows that it was actually a shed tooth, which means that it was broken off due to damage, due to use, due to being punched in the face by something, and it actually allowed the tooth to then break away and a new tooth to begin to form, like we've talked about with Tyrannosaurus. So this is an amazing specimen, a specimen that I absolutely love, and I'm so happy to be able to share it with you. And so, like great specimens, there's great bourbon. And if you like what we're doing here, please like, share, and subscribe us. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. I love talking about bourbon and dinosaurs and fossils. And I hope that you enjoy listening about it. And like always, remember to share a great bourbon with someone.